Human found an injured beast and saved it, not knowing it was a pet. Beginning, the beast in the forest. The storm had left the forest in tatters. Great trees lay across the dirt paths, their roots sticking out like broken bones. Rivers swelled beyond their banks, rushing brown and furious, and the air still smelled of ozone and damp earth. For Kieran Holt, who lived alone in a cabin on the outskirts of the frontier town of Vera, storms meant two things: repairing what had broken and checking the forest for survivors. Not human survivors. Vera was too small, and people had already taken shelter. What Kieran checked for were the animals. He'd always had a soft spot for them, since before the expansion into the outer colonies, back when Earth itself had been his home. With his pack slung across his back, filled with med supplies, nutrient gels, and an old plasma knife, he trudged into the storm-beaten woods. His boots sank into wet moss as he scanned for movement. That's when he heard it, a low, ragged sound, half growl and half moan. Kieran froze. He wasn't foolish. The forests of Vera were dangerous. Predators lurked here, some as big as armored transports. He slowly drew the plasma knife, the hum of its blade comforting against the heavy silence. The noise came again, and this time Kieran followed. Behind a cluster of fallen trees, in a shallow pit created by the storm, he saw it. A beast. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Larger than a horse, covered in matted black fur that shimmered faintly with blue veins when the light hit it. Its head was shaped like a wolf's, though elongated, with ridges that glowed faintly. For golden eyes blinked weakly, and its chest rose and fell in shallow, painful breaths. Its hind leg was twisted, blood pooling beneath it, and one wing, a wing, Kieran realized with awe, was bent at an unnatural angle. He should have run. Any sane man would have. But instead, Kieran crouched. "You're hurt," he said softly, as though the beast could understand. The creature growled, baring teeth longer than Kieran's hand, but its strength was gone. Against all instinct, against a caution bred from years in the frontier, Kieran sheathed his knife and pulled open his med pack. He spoke in a low, steady voice as he cleaned the wound, tore strips of scent bandage, and wrapped the broken leg. The beast snarled once, tried a lunge, then collapsed. Its breathing slowed, and within minutes, its eyes closed. Kieran didn't know if it would live, but he couldn't leave it. He built a makeshift sled with fallen branches and his rope, straining under the weight as he dragged the massive creature through the woods. By the time he reached his cabin, he was soaked, exhausted, but unwilling to stop. That night, he lay awake listening to the storm, the steady rasp of the creature's breathing filling his cabin. He didn't know why he had saved it, only that something inside him refused to let it die alone in the mud. Middle, the bond, the beast lived. Days turned into weeks as Kieran nursed it back to health. Its wings slowly folded back into place, though flight was still impossible. Its leg healed, though it limped. Kieran fed it with preserved meats and thick broth, to which the creature responded with suspicion at first, then with hunger. Slowly, it began to trust him. It would watch him as he worked, its golden eyes unblinking. It never let him come too close, but it tolerated his presence. When he spoke aloud, telling it stories of his childhood on Earth, of the oceans he missed, of the stars that stretched forever, it would tilt its head as if listening. One evening, when the twin moons of Vera glowed above the treetops, the beast surprised him. Kieran had been repairing his roof when he heard the crunch of underbrush. He turned sharply, knife in hand, but saw the beast padding toward him, carrying something in its jaws, a slain varkat, one of the dangerous predators that stalked the woods. It dropped the carcass at his feet, then sat back, watching him with an intensity that made his throat tighten. "You brought me food?" Kieran whispered. The beast only stared, but something in its gaze told him what words never could. Gratitude. Recognition. From that night, a bond formed. The beast followed him at a distance, guarded the cabin at night, and even accompanied him into the deeper parts of the forest. Where once Kieran had been alone, now he felt the steady presence of a companion. He began to call it Shadowfawn. But Kieran also began to notice strange things. The beast was intelligent, far more intelligent than any animal he'd encountered. It understood commands he hadn't taught. It could anticipate his movements. Once, when a falling branch nearly crushed him, Shadowfang lunged and shoved him out of the way. And then there was the technology. A week after Shadowfang's recovery, Kieran found a shard of metal embedded in its wing, black, with strange glowing circuits. Not natural. He removed it carefully, and Shadowfang let out a low, mournful sound, almost as though it remembered something painful. Kieran stared at the shard for hours, a chill running through him. This beast wasn't just an animal. Someone or something had made contact with it before. Rising conflict, the arrival. The truth came sooner than Kieran expected. One evening, As he and Shadowfong sat outside the cabin watching the moon's rise, a low rumble filled the air. Kieran's heart pounded as light streaked across the sky, descending fast. Ships, sleek, silver, and bristling with weapons. They landed in the clearing beyond the forest, and armored figures emerged. Not human. Their bodies were tall and lean, with skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that emitted faint clicks and pulses. Shadowfong growled, lowering itself to the ground, every muscle tense. Kieran froze as the figures advanced. One raised a device that projected a hologram into the air, an image of a creature, not just any creature. Shadowfong. Kieran's stomach dropped. One of the aliens barked in a harsh language, then switched to a translation device. The voice that came out was cold and mechanical. Return the royal beast. It is the property of the sovereign house of Valor. Kieran blinked. Royal beast. The alien repeated louder, return it. Kieran looked at Shadowfong, then back at the soldiers. Pieces fell into place. The shard of technology. The unnatural intelligence. The way it seemed aware. This wasn't just a wild animal. This was the pet of someone powerful, an alien noble, perhaps even a galactic ruler. And Kieran had saved it without knowing. But Shadowfong pressed closer to him, its golden eyes fixed on the soldiers, its body shaking with restrained fury. It doesn't want to go with you, Kieran said quietly. The alien's tone sharpened. You are a human colonist. You have no authority. Step aside. When Kieran didn't move, the soldiers raised their weapons. Shadowfong roared. What followed was chaos. Plasma bolts seared through the air as Shadowfong leapt, moving with terrifying speed despite its injuries. It tore through the first soldier, scattering armor like paper. Kieran ducked behind a fallen tree, heart hammering, clutching his knife though it was useless against such technology. But Shadowfong fought with fury. It defended Kieran as if he were its master, even as more soldiers swarmed. Then, a booming voice cut through the battle. Enough! A new figure stepped from the largest ship, taller than the rest, draped in regal armor of black and silver, with a crown-like helm that pulsed with light. The soldiers froze, bowing. Shadowfong stopped, chest heaving, and then, shockingly, lowered itself to the ground in submission. The figure approached, removing the helm. Its face was angular, eyes glowing violet. Features both beautiful and terrible. So, the alien said, their voice smooth but laced with power. You are the one who sheltered my companion. Kieran swallowed hard. I didn't know. I just found it injured. The alien studied him, then knelt before Shadowfong, running a hand along its fur. The beast whimpered softly, pressing its head against the alien's chest like a loyal hound reunited with its master. My beloved Varix, the alien murmured. You were lost to me. Kieran's heart twisted. He had known this day would come. But seeing Shadowfong, Varix, choose its true master filled him with a hollow ache. The alien turned back to him. Human, you saved the life of the royal beast of Valor. That act carries weight. Ending the choice. The alien leader, General Caliph, as Kieran later learned, offered him rewards. Land, wealth, even transport off Vera, back toward the core worlds where humans rarely set foot. But none of it mattered. Kieran only asked one thing. Let me see him sometimes. He was my friend. Caliph regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. Unusual, but your bond is undeniable. Varix has chosen to protect you, even against my soldiers. Such loyalty cannot be ignored. And so, a strange arrangement was made. The alien ships departed, but not without leaving a beacon at Kieran's cabin. Whenever Caliph visited the frontier, Varix would be allowed to return, to roam the forest with Kieran once more. The first time it happened, weeks later, Kieran heard the familiar growl outside his cabin. He opened the door, and there was Shadowfong, no, Varix, waiting. The beast lowered its massive head, and Kieran pressed his forehead against its fur. You came back, he whispered. The golden eyes blinked slowly, full of warmth. Kieran smiled to the ache in his chest. He had saved a beast, not knowing it was the prized pet of an alien ruler. But in the end, titles didn't matter. What mattered was a bond they shared, one forged in blood, storm, and trust. And though Varys belonged to another world, another master, Kieran knew one truth with certainty. In the heart of the forest, under twin moons, the beast had chosen him too.